Welcome to Storytime. Enjoy with me. A Fishy Story by Clare West.
The west of Ireland, with its rivers full of salmon, is a grand place to go fishing. Sinclair Yates has been trying to catch salmon for 3 days, but without success. He starts his journey home, travelling by train, which in the early years of the 20th century is an experience full of interest and surprises. People say there is no smoke without fire, but that was not true in the station waiting room where I had to wait for my train. There was certainly plenty of smoke, but the fire seemed quite dead. When I complained to the station master, he said that any chimney in the world would smoke in a southeasterly wind. He was, however, sympathetic, and took me to his own fire in his office, where the steam rose in clouds from my wet boots. We talked of politics and salmon fishing, and I had to confess that on my 3-day trip I had not caught a single fish. Before the signal for my train was received, I realised for the 100th time the wonderful individuality of the Irish mind and the importance of the personal element in Ireland. If you ask people for help, they will break rules, ignore official advice, make special arrangements, all just to please you. I found a seat in a carriage, and the train dragged itself noisily out of the station. A cold spring rain, the time was the middle of a most unseasonal April, poured down as we came into the open. I closed both windows and began to read my wife's letter again. Philippa often says I do not read her letters, and as I was now on my way to join her and my family in England, it seemed sensible to study again her latest letter of instructions. Such bad luck that you haven't caught any salmon. If the worst comes to the worst, and you still haven't by the time you join us, couldn't you buy one? I hit my knee with my hand. I had forgotten about the damn fish. Philippa would say, "Sinclair, I was right. You don't read my letters, do you?" It's a pity she never learns from these frequent experiences. I don't mind being called a fool, but then I should be allowed to forget things as fools do. Without doubt, Philippa had written to Alice Harvey, whose house we were staying in for the next week, and told her that Sinclair would be only too delighted to bring her a salmon. And Alice Harvey, who was rich enough to find much enjoyment in saving money, would have already planned the meal down to the last fishbone. Anxiously thinking about this, I travelled through the rain. About every 6 miles we stopped at a station. At one, the only event was that the station master presented a newspaper to the guard. At the next, the guard read aloud some interesting facts from it to the driver. The personal element was strong on this line of the Munster and Connacht Railway. Routine, hated by all artistic minds, was disguised by conversation. According to the timetable, we were supposed to spend 10 minutes at Carrick Station, but it was 15 before all the market people on the platform had climbed onto the train. Finally, the window of the carriage next to mine was thrown open, and an angry English voice asked how much longer the train was going to wait. The station master, who was deep in conversation with the guard, and a man carrying a long parcel wrapped in newspaper, looked round and said seriously, "Well now, that's a mystery." The man with the parcel turned away and studied an advertisement, his shoulders shaking. The guard put his hand over his mouth. The voice, even angrier now, demanded the earliest time its owner could get to Belfast. "You'll be asking me next when I take me breakfast," replied the station master calmly. The window closed with a bang, and the man on the platform dropped his parcel, which fell to the ground. "Oh, me fish!" cried the man, carefully picking up a remarkably handsome salmon that had slipped out of its wrapping. Suddenly, I had a bright idea. I opened my window and called to the station master. "Excuse me, would your friend sell me that salmon?" There was a moment's lively discussion, and the station master replied, "I'm sorry, sir. He's only just bought it, in this little delay we have. But why don't you run down and get one for yourself? There are 6 or 7 of them down at Coffee's, selling cheap. There'll be time enough. We're waiting for the mail train to pass through in the other direction, and it hasn't been signalled yet." I jumped from the carriage and ran out of the station at top speed, followed by a shout from the guard that he wouldn't forget me. Congratulating myself on the influence of the personal element, I hurried through the town. On my way, I met a red-faced, heated man carrying another salmon, who informed me there were still 3 or 4 fish at Coffee's, and that he was running from the train himself. "Coffee's is the house with the boots in the window," he called after me. "She'll sell at 10p a pound if you're stiff with her." 10p a pound, I thought, at this time of year? That's good enough. I saw the boots in the window and rushed through a dark doorway. At that moment, I heard, horrifyingly near, the whistle of the approaching mail train. The fat woman who appeared from a back room understood the situation at once, and in one rapid movement picked up a large fish from the floor and threw a newspaper round it. "Weighs 8 pounds, she said. 10 shillings. I realised she was charging more than 10p a pound, but this was not the moment for stiffness. I pushed the coins into her fishy hand, took the salmon in my arms, and ran. Needless to say, it was uphill, and at the steepest point I heard another whistle and feared that the worst had happened. When I reached the platform, my train was already out of the station, but the personal element was still working for me. Everybody in the station, or so it seemed to me, shouted loudly to the driver. The station master put his fingers in his mouth and sent an unearthly whistle after the departing train. It took effect. The train slowed. I jumped from the platform and followed it along the rails. There were passengers' heads at all the windows, watching me with deep interest. The guard bent down and helped me up onto the train. "Sorry, sir. The English gentleman going to Belfast wouldn't let me wait any longer," he said, apologetically. From Carrick Station came a delighted cry from the station master. "You told him you wouldn't forget him!" My very public return to my seat was greeted with great sympathy by the 7 countrywomen who were now in my carriage. I was hot and out of breath, and the eyes of the 7 women were fixed on me with deep and untiring interest. After a while, one of them opened the conversation by supposing it was at Coffee's I got the salmon. I said it was. There was a silence, during which it was obvious that one question burnt in every heart. "She's sure to have asked for 10p, said one woman. "It's a beautiful fish," I said bravely. 8 pounds weight. I gave her 10 shillings for it. This confession produced a wave of shock and sympathy. Sure, and Eliza Coffey would rob her own mother. How could an honest gentleman win a battle with her? Eliza Coffey never paid a penny for that fish. Those boys of hers stole a whole lot of them last night. At the next station, they climbed out. I helped them with their heavy baskets, and in return they told me I was a fine man, and they wished me well on my journey. They also left me with the information that I was soon to present the highly respectable Alice Harvey with a stolen salmon. The afternoon passed cheerlessly into evening, and my journey did not get any better. Somewhere in the grey half-light I changed trains, and again later on, and at each change the salmon lost some of its newspaper wrapping. I wondered seriously whether to bury it in my suitcase. At the next station, we paused for a long time. Nothing at all happened, and the rain beat patiently on the carriage roof. I closed my eyes to avoid the cold stare of the salmon and fell asleep.
To be continued.